Okay, exciting, exciting. So I'm going to begin like this because, well, so rediscovering our inner child. Madhya, I don't know why I'm laughing. Madhya creator,
And Noor entrepreneur.
we believe you. So Noor entrepreneur and
Noor.
दोबारा शुरू नहीं करना है मैं तो इसी तरह शुरू करना
अच्छा.
यही है inner child feels. So you're an entrepreneur.
Noor entrepreneur and a believer of magic.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you for being here. I hope it turns out to be one of those silly episodes because there's been a lot of heavy stuff going on in the past few months since we began, which has its place. So when you were sitting together and saying, Noor, you want to come on the podcast? And you said, what do you want to talk about? And I said, I want to talk about inner child. And I remember we had this entire session on the inner child as well, which was a little intense. But since then, I haven't really, the title did not come to me as naturally because I think I was thinking with a grown-up mind. I wanted to sound a little meaningful and intelligent and something that like summarizes everything that I want to talk about. And my inner child was like, nah, let's just keep things easy. Let's just keep things flow. We'll see. So literally the title, which is rediscovering. My inner child is really losing it. So rediscovering our inner child came at 5 o'clock, like today, when we were recording. But then when it did come, with it also came this sense of lightness and this sense of la 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 la.
Because it's inner child.
Because it's the inner child. And I've spent, and the other thing that came to me was this book that is very, very dear to me. In fact, that book, and I think I might want to do something about it. It's called Giraffes Can't Dance. Okay. And it's by Julia Donaldson. So I love, she is a children's writer and she writes such beautiful, meaningful books for children, which all come from the same core of how beautiful we are, how different we are, how unique we are. And we're taught to be the same. And when we are taught to be the same, we forget our differences and we forget our uniqueness. And that's when we that's when we begin to lose our magic. And that's when we first begin to taste being unhappy. So all her books, so the other book is The Lion Who Wanted to Love. So it's like bohemian crazy ass lion
Okay.
who does not want to eat giraffes and who does not want to bite antlers but wants to hug them and play with them instead.
Aww.
So he's banished from the kingdom, and then so there's an entire, so I love her series, and I think I used to get it more for myself than for my daughter. But Giraffes Can't Dance is especially dear for me because I have actually used that book as one of the tools for in my trainer workshops for marketeers, so all grown-ups, serious people who really know what they're talking about with degrees and all, right? Okay. So I have read Giraffes Can't Dance to adult audiences. And I have not just read it, I have enacted it. So I wish I'd remembered to bring that book, and I would have loved to read it. Maybe I will do it as like a separate session on just the book itself. But what it talks about is there's this big jungle dance. It's an annual affair. And all the animals come together to showcase their brilliant dance moves, okay? And they know the tango and the cha-cha-chas, and then somebody does the ballet, and they're like really, really good at it. But the giraffe, because giraffe having those those legs and those long neck, does not know what to do with its body. So he is very sad and he goes off onto the jungle, extremely depressed. And he hears a cricket on that full moon night. And the cricket is, as crickets would, is singing, the cricket is playing a violin. So the cricket is singing its song. And as the cricket begins to sing its song, the giraffe is falls so much in love with that song that his body begins to move in spite of himself. So now at that point, he's not thinking with his mind. There are no other eyes which are watching him or expecting him to perform. He is moving for the love of the music that he's hearing. And he's not conscious of a dance. But because he's so in love with the music that he's hearing, and when he begins to dance, it's this beautiful rhythm, unlike anything anybody has seen before. And the rhythm is so magnetic that it draws other animals who are participating in the dance fair to that spot. And then the animals say, "Oh my God, you're dancing so beautifully. Show us, how do you do that?" And the giraffe then, tries to, but he can't really teach other people because he was dancing to his own music. And I love the last line of that book, which says, "We all can dance when we find the music that we love."
Lovely.
I love that
Lovely,
last line,
yeah.
right? So when I'm reading that book, I become the giraffe. So I'm like the one who's like falling off, like with crazy legs, and being extremely like mortified that I can't dance, and all the animals are making fun of me. But then I begin to dance. I'm copying the giraffe in the book. I begin to dance and I begin to sing also. I don't sing otherwise, right? Like I just don't. And like so much so कि like मैं अपनी बच्ची को बेचारी को lullaby सुनाने की कोशिश करती हूँ, she's like, "Stop, no lullaby." so it's that bad, right? But I sing, and I was singing in that workshop also, and somehow, Noor, when I sing that song, which I don't know the tune of because it's the lyrics written in a book. Who knows? I made up that tune myself. I can sing. Right? And there's this such though, because I really, really, really connect with and believe in the message of those lyrics. We all can dance when we find the music that we love. So when I talk about the inner child, and with this connected to this is like my niece, she's actually 9, and I was having this conversation with her. And I was saying, okay, she's like, "Oh, Maddie Popo, when are you doing your podcast next? And what is it about?" I said, "It's about the inner child." She said, "Oh my God, that's so freaky." I said, "Who's the inner child?" I said, "Well, inner child are people who live inside us."
Yeah.
And it's like, "Nobody lives inside me. I am the child. Are you telling me that the people living inside me?" I said, "No, but it is." And so I tried to, explain it. How do you explain it to a 9-year-old what an inner child is? And I said, what the inner child is every time I said, "Elena, do you believe in magic?" And she said, "Absolutely." So and then she told me a story that not story, but what she believes in, what she does. She said, "You know what, Madi Popo, Menika, tell me." She said, "I am the keeper of the forest." And I said, "What does that mean?" So she said, outside in the lawn, all the trees and all the plants which are there, I'm the one who is their caretaker. So I know their names. I know that if they're going through like a bad time or a good time, or if they're feeling lonely. I also know all the insects, and I have a couple of caterpillars who are my friends. And I said, "So you are the keeper of that forest?" And she said, "I'm exactly that." And I said, have you talked about this with anybody else?" She's like, "No, it sounds silly." Menika, this. The fact that you believe that you are a keeper of the forest is the fact that you are staying true to you being an inner child, to your inner child. And the fact that you do not talk about this with anybody else because you think it's silly, that's what growing up does to the inner child. And if that inner child, who right now is 9 years old, who believes she is the keeper of a magical forest, if she keeps that same magic alive in her every time she wants to start a new dream, without the ifs and the buts and the hows and whens. So, for example, if she wants to go and be this, because she's in love with Harry Potter, if she wants to go to England and she wants to live in a small loft and write a book. And when I speak to her about that, or try to speak to her about that, she's like, "But I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to happen. It's going to be a little strange living away from my parents. I've never lived abroad. I don't know how things are going to be. I don't know if I'm a good writer. There's so many amazing writers. I'll never be able to be as good as Harry." So all these things come to mind, which is the mind. And all these things of I'm not good enough, and I'm scared of going to a new place. I don't know if I will be successful. That is us, the grown-up mind, taking us away from the inner child and telling us that, there are other barriers where there are so many barriers where you cannot really do what you love. But if she were to, like the giraffe, were to at 19, 20, 18, 16, whenever, if she can successfully pick up a pen one day and decide that I will write the most beautiful, magical book, and just that, if she only decides that, and in her mind, there is no comparison, it will never be like any other book because it's so purely unique to her. And she forgets how many readers this book will drive to her. She forgets how, if it's going to be best. No, she picks up that pen for the love of writing that book that must be written because she needs to write that book. She is being true to her inner child. But we're not taught to be that.
Unfortunately.
So we're not taught to be big and magical because that's illogical, impractical. It's not also safe because we need to go to good institutions, get good degrees, get good jobs, pay our mortgage, get the real estate, get married, have children, take a vacation every year, make sure that our kids go to good schools, make sure that they're getting the right grades, make sure that we're repeating the cycle that our parents were living and they're repeating the cycle that we're living, and make sure nobody ever breaks out of that cycle, and make sure that we're unhappy because we're not doing what we love. And I don't mean all of us, I mean most of us. And our kids are unhappy because they're doing what the parents thought best for them. And so we have a deeply unhappy group of 40-year-old somethings or 30-year-old somethings who are really little children who want to write magical books and who want to travel. And there's some of them that do. Some of them we look at the Nat Geo, at least I like the Nat Geo photographers and the adventurers.
Absolutely,
and the content creators, and they're living it. Or people who just decide to pack out, the stories that you read on a positive, on up, वो कौन सा page है? Uplift, upkeep, क्या नाम है? Up positive, जो भी page है. The beautiful stories that she just decided to quit her job, pack her bags and take off. And now she's why is she so successful right now? It's not like she's starving. It's not like, she's not being taken care of, or like bad things are happening to her. She's doing what she loves and beautiful things are happening for her. And we read that story. And we switch off the light, pop our sleeping pills, set up our alarms for the next morning at 7:00 in the morning, and then the routine starts all over again. But the beautiful thing about life, Noor, which I have discovered, is that the natural force of life is such that it is designed to, there are natural alarms within our lives, which are set as reminders for remember your inner child, remember your inner child. Now, those things happen in terms of events or moments in our lives where we're given chances. And it's not one chance, we're given at least 1,000 million chances in our lifespan of 70, 80 years to plug back with our inner child. Now, those chances might look terrible to us. Those chances might come in form of a divorce, might come in form of a child who's on the spectrum, might come in form of a job that you've been fired from, might come in form of a household that you've never felt safe in, might come in the form of all these traumas and tragedies that have happened to our life. All of those are alarms, natural life force alarms. Hey, girl, wake up. Hey, girl, wake up. There's an inner child. There's an inner child. And what is the inner child saying? The inner child is saying, and so at least my inner child, so she's like this crazy little thing. मुझे मिट्टी से I'm an OCD person. Like I've been diagnosed with OCD also. तो मुझे मिट्टी और मेरी को ज़्यादा दोस्ती नहीं है. और अब जब से मैं उसे मिली वो तो बिल्कुल नंगे पाँव ही फिरती है. तो मैं नंगे पाँव ही अब इस वक्त लॉन में मैं नंगे पाँव पे चल रही होती हूँ. So my little girl, my Madiha, my inner child is she's this barefoot little creature of the forest who's not afraid of anything. And she is okay with not fitting in because she has her own group of friends. She has her own circle of people that she hangs out with and she talks to. She has her own stories. हर बात पे जाके वो क्लिफ से छलांग लगा देती है. So like, of course, she lives in, because right now when I'm talking about her, I'm with her. So she lives in her own beautiful magical forest, which has, and I'm 43 years old. So if I'm talking like this, I swear to God, I believe in this, because right now what's running through my mind is the place that my inner child lives in, which is the place, which is my safe space, which is the space I go to when I want to connect with the real core of who I am. And that place is a glass forest. जहाँ पे किसी दरख्त के जो पत्ते हैं वो पत्ते वाले टेक्सचर है ही नहीं, वो बनी सारी ग्लास से हुए हैं. And because they're glass, they are refracting beautiful colors. And because they're glass, they're actually wind chimes every time the wind blows. And that forest is right on the edge of this beautiful, cloudy little valley. And you jump off that cliff, which she does every like 5 minutes. Nothing. You float, you fly. And basically, what she's teaching me to be is a little bit more brave in my everyday life. अब मैंने तो क्लिफ से जाके छलांगे तो नहीं मैं लगाऊंगी ना, मतलब बंजी जंपिंग नहीं चली गई हूँ. It's not a direct
Of course,
correlation.
yeah.
But she's strengthening my heart to take a chance on new things. That's what she's doing. So it's not a literal jumping off cliffs, but she's saying, hey, kya ho jayega? Hold my hand. So mostly I see mostly when I go with her, or mostly when I'm there, at least in the beginning, even now, I'm hesitant. And she said, acha, kuch nahi, hold my hand. She jumps and I'm holding her hand. I jump with her and we freaking fly. Nothing happens. Nothing happens. And so when I then wake up in the morning, I'm a little bit more bolder in standing up for who I am. And not standing up against anybody, but against myself. Like the grown-up Madiha, the little Madiha is assuring the grown-up Madiha, it's okay to do new things. कुछ भी नहीं होगा. 4 अगर लोग तुम्हारे आसपास जो तुम्हारे पास, if you feel that you need these 4 people around you to hold you don't need anybody. But you will have 6 people around you when you decide to jump, who will jump with you and fly with you. So I will never ever be alone. What's the biggest fear? What's the very, very biggest human fear that we have when we're on the verge, when we're asked to make a decision to plug back into our inner child? हमसे छिन जाएगा वो सब कुछ. We will lose everything that's familiar, including our relationships, including people that we love, our heart's desires, and all the material. सब कुछ छिन जाएगा. Absolutely छिनेगा. Absolutely. 100%. And yet, who you meet on the other side will be, in most cases, by the way, the upgraded version of the same people that you left behind. They're not new people. Unko siraf ek, if you are the person who's going to jump off first and do that thing first, you have actually given them the hosla. Okay, look, I jumped, I'm flying, come with me. Now you're not saying it, but your entire energy field is like potent and inspiring them, and they'll jump with you. And so वो जब आप जंप कर रहे हो तो आपको लगता है किसी को पीछे छोड़ के जा रहे हो. ऐसा ही होता है. बट आपने जंप किया और आपने मुड़ के उनको देखा. वो कहते हैं आ जाओ, like आ जाओ. And they'll jump. Most of them will jump with you. Some of them will stay behind, and that's okay. But most of them who your heart truly desires, you will not lose. So it's not a trade-off. And so that's what my inner child is teaching me. And I'd love to hear more about your inner child, because I know you've met her. I know you know who she is. So tell me a little bit more about your inner child.
Well, to start off, talking about myself, थोड़ा सा मैं background देती हूँ आपको. I had a very invisible childhood. Due to XYZ circumstances, I used to live with my grandmother, which और उसमें ये था कि अच्छा, तो उस पे ये था कि मुझे शुरू से ही ये लगना शुरू हो गया कि आई एम फंडामेंटली फ्लॉयड एंड इनकॉम्पिटेंट. मैं शायद कुछ नहीं कर सकती. इसलिए मुझे थोड़ी आइसोलेशन में रहना मुझे ज़्यादा आई फेल्ट कंफर्टेबल स्टेइंग इन माई ओन कंफर्टेबल जोन. एक चीज़ ज़रूर थी कि आई रिमेंबर इवन व्हेन आई वाज 5 years old, I loved painting. I loved playing with colors. So abhi recently when we had that healing session, uske baad I did some meditation.
Wow.
Yeah. And I could
Where does your inner child live?
Oh, well, she's busy painting mountains.
Of course she is.
Yeah.
I know we were having that conversation. I was like, so my inner child has an entire kingdom, and I have a castle and I have a stream flowing. And you were just like, मैंने कहा तुम क्या कर रही हो? And she's like, my inner child is painting all over your castle walls. And I was like, stay away. That's like vandalism. What are you doing with my castle walls? I want them to be nice and pretty. She's like, I can't stop my inner child. She loves
Absolutely.
painting. Yeah.
For my inner child, there are no barriers. There are no definitions for XYZ to be in a certain way. For instance, the sky is green and the grass is blue for my inner child.
Of course it
Yeah.
is.
So
How are you trying to like, are you trying to channel her? Like, what is she? So like I was saying, when I jump off cliffs, what she's trying to teach me is to be a little bit more brave in doing new things and not be as afraid of leaving things behind, right? So that was my theme. So तुम्हारी inner child का क्या theme है? Like when she's painting the world, like for her, the entire universe is a canvas that she's painting into being. So what are you, like, what is she teaching you? What are you learning from her?
to be fearless.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because throughout the time, my inner child had been snubbed और वो कहीं कोने में छुप कर बैठी रही है, right? तो अब जब उसको मौका मिला है, she's all wild.
So मौका कैसे मिला है? That's what I want to talk about. Like I know that वो जो मौके की बात आती है, like a wake up calls जो हमारे, it's almost like they're programmed in our lives, huh? So and most times we are afraid to answer that wake up. हम लोग snooze पे लगा के सो जाते हैं. अब वो हम लोग अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह कि हम लोग switch off नहीं कर सकते हैं वो अलार्म, because that's the natural system. Snooze ही कर सकते हैं. So you must have snoozed that alarm, but recently you answered it, and I feel like there's another change that's happened in your life, because within 2 days you quit your job and started your own. Do you want to talk about that? Like there is you did not snooze your wake up call this time. So I want to know the circumstance, if you'd like to share the circumstances in which you decided to answer that call.
Achha, so, as I was in a journey of discovering my inner child, I figured out that she's a freedom lover. She can't restrict herself to a particular place, perhaps because for a while and for the longest period of time, she had been there और वो वहीं पर ही थी, लेकिन उसको मौका नहीं मिल रहा था, क्योंकि obviously snooze पे तो लगा हुआ था सब कुछ, ठीक है, हर थोड़ी देर बाद जब वो नॉक कर रही थी तो मैं snooze पे लगा देती थी उसको. So this time around, I just felt that no, we need to talk, we need to meet. I just need to hear her out. And that's when I realized that ये टिक कर बैठने वाली तो नहीं है, ये टिक कर नहीं बैठेगी, इसको उड़ना है, इसको खुलकर जो है सब कुछ करना है, इसको खुलकर जीना है, इसको अपनी मर्जी के मुताबिक सिचुएशंस को कंट्रोल में लेकर आना, राइट? बिकॉज पहले तो नहीं था कंट्रोल. सो दैट्स व्हेन आई डिसाइडेड दैट सबसे पहले तो मुझे इस जॉब साइकिल से निकलना है बाहर. वाओ. और उसके बाद
So how many years had you been working for?
For good 6 years, 6 to 7 years.
Wow. अच्छा.
और वही रूटीन जो अभी आप पहले बात कर रही थी कि सुबह उठ के आप बाहर जाना, वो ये एक साइकिल बना हुआ है जिसमें आप लगे हुए हो and you're not getting time to meet your inner self.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
तो उसके बाद जो है I decided कि नहीं, this has to stop.
So did you have anything in hand when you decided to quit and do something on your own? Like, did you have any safety net? Did you have any plan? Did you have any idea? Like, was it any plan?
Well, I'll be very honest with you. I had to jump off the mountain cliff.
I love this. I love this.
And I did. I did.
Hi, Noor, मुझे थोड़ा सा इस वक्त like a cliff jumping envy हो रही है. Because I am, wow. I don't even know, because you did it. So perhaps you're not really aware of the actual amount of courage that takes for you, especially because हम लोग जिस environment में रह रहे हैं, economic environment में रह रहे हैं, आपको बहुत ज़्यादा एक lack की awareness बताई गई है, हालांकि lack नहीं है. तो whether we like it or not, हमारे दिमाग के अंदर सीप इन हो जाता है कि अगर ये नौकरी छूट गई तो बस चूल्हा बंद हो जाएगा, इसके बाद कोई दुनिया और कोई ज़िंदगी नहीं है. And I feel like a part of me is still stuck in that cycle, because the part of me that responding to you quitting your job and starting something without a plan is the wow, she did it. That means there's something in me that also wants to break out of that cycle, but that I'm still being held back. So how did you, like, were you scared? Were you like, how did you just, I don't know.
That's when the magic of believing came in.
Hmm.
I had to have that belief कि देखी जाएगी और हो जाएगा.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
मुझे ये चीज़ तो सर्टनली पता थी कि मैं कर लूँगी, बिकॉज नाउ दैट आई हैव दैट कनेक्ट. मुझे कहीं ना कहीं हाथ पकड़ कर तो माई इनर चाइल्ड विल टेक मी.
Hmm. Hmm.
आई वाज सर्टन, आई न्यू दैट फॉर द फैक्ट ये हो जाएगा.
Hmm.
बाकी ये है कि
And it's going well, like
It
your
is.
entire entrepreneur journey.
it is so far, it is, alhamdulillah,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
And how does it feel different from your like job self? Like, is there a before and after to Noor? Like Noor who was in the job and Noor who is an entrepreneur. Like in terms of feeling, do you feel different?
Of course, I mean the feeling of freedom, the feeling of doing things my way, the feeling of not being controlled by वो एक चीज़ है जो कि I feel के somehow different. I can do things my way now. So that is something that I feel that my inner child always wanted, and even me as an adult always wanted that. But वो बीच में connection एक इतना major missing था कि वो चीज़ नहीं हो पा रही थी.
I think the other part of the inner child is the fact that once you, okay, so meeting, okay, if we break it down, right? So there comes a point in your life where you want to do something really brave, and you know that it's right for you, but you're not being able to find the courage. And people talk about this, right? In really extreme moments sometimes, or in life-changing moments, like, I don't know where I found that courage. So that where moment is actually when we are plugging back into the fearlessness of the inner child. So that's one. But mostly होता ये है कि we use that inner child fearlessness to make that leap, make that decision, and then jump into another cycle, and then get into another rut, and then we wait for another alarm call later. So for me, the challenge was because I kind of used that same, when I answered the call, I ended up shifting to Malaysia with it. I was like, मुझे जाना है, right? But वहाँ पे जाके मेरा जो once I connected with the inner child, the second part of the journey of having met your inner child and what comes next came for me. And what comes next is that you might be able to borrow from the bravery and the fearlessness of the inner child for a small period, but you've got to build a relationship with that younger part of you. And when you begin to build that relationship, as is true for any other relationship, you've got to you discover that there's so many aspects of your own childhood or your own child self that you had suppressed and that you'd pushed down. And so there is a lot of trust building that is needed between you and your inner child self. And that trust building actually empowers you to never be stuck into any cycle ever again. So that trust building so I wanted to understand for myself, and that's where the second phase of my journey began, is like, how do you keep yourself connected forever to your inner child? And that's when I realized that there's a lot that we can take from the inner child, but there's a lot that the inner child needs from us as well. It's a symbiotic relationship. It's not just one way.
Absolutely, yeah.
So at that time, I realized that I need to be the mother, and I'm using this word loosely because the word mother connotes nourishment and encouragement for me. So I need to mother my inner child back into trusting me and to always be there and not just use them in pivotal moments of my life. And so what I started doing was, for the first time, I started speaking to the younger part of me, almost as if a mother would speak to a child. A badi basic hoti hai, because it's a 6 7 year old self, right? So you have to, as I say, how would you explain it to an elevator, just an elevator pitch? How would you explain this idea to a 5 year old? And that's when you test the strength of an idea, and you use this for like the biggest tech innovations. Tell me how you would explain this idea to a 5 year old.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah.
exactly how you simplify it to the core. So I am now saying the most basic things, but things, Noor, that my younger self has needed to hear and still needs to hear so many times, because she still does not believe it fully. So things like, you are seen, you are heard, what you are feeling is valid, what you want is important, you are safe.
The most important part of it.
The most important, and that's the most important affirmation that I say to my inner child, like something that you are safe. Nobody's ever going to harm you again. I'm here. I'm going to take care of you. And what do I mean when I say take care of you? There's no actual child that I'm going to be taking care of. But what I'm actually promising to my inner child is that every time you have an idea, every time you have an inspiration, every time you want to do something that's true to us, I am not going to say that it's stupid and the other people are not doing it. Why would you do it? You're an idiot for believing in it. That's so impractical. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And so the safety part of it is not physical safety anymore at the time that we are now promising it to our inner child. The safety part of it is staying true and never forgetting again who she is and what she stands for. And so just as recently as yesterday, बिकॉज मुझे बहुत ज़्यादा फियर अभी भी, क्योंकि वो तो छलांगे मारती रहती है और मैं छलांगे उसके साथ मार लेती हूँ. नाउ कम शो टाइम, which is like everyday life, come show time, when I have to put my game face on. Come show time with my game face on, I am freaking scared of doing a few things. So yeah, I'm losing the thread right now. So what one thing that I say before I get out of bed in the morning is, okay, today I allow you to lead me in all my interactions and all my responses. And many times I forget, but what's been happening at least in the past 4 or 5 days is that very consciously, when I encounter a person who is aggressive, who is angry, who is being, they're showing up as an energy, which is an aggressive energy in my workspace and in my stakeholder management space. I swear to God, it's such a beautiful trick. I imagine them as a 7-year-old, like I'm talking to a 7-year-old. And now when a 7-year-old is angry, वो गुस्सा नहीं आता, वो हंसी आ रही होती है. And hasi not in a bad way, not in a disparaging way, but more like, I understand. I know. It's okay, baby. Yeah. It's okay, baby boy. It's okay.
Yeah.
And so for example, this day before yesterday, I stepped into a meeting. It was with a person who was already triggered. And I could feel my ego wanting to be triggered. I could feel it. वो आ रहा था, उबाला आने लगा था मुझे. And I was like, wait a minute. I would let my inner child respond to this. So I said, oh my God, hi, how are you? Oh, I'm so sorry. Did no one tell you about this meeting? I understand. Acha, so, and then I said, acha, chalo, मैं कोई बात नहीं, मैं तो जाके wait कर लेती हूँ. So he was like, no, it's okay, you can wait here. And then, because before that, there was a very beautiful painting in that room. So I said, oh my God, where'd you get this painting? It's so beautiful. And immediately, the response that I got was, so when I was there, a friend of mine, she was really interested in this. So she painted it, gifted it to me. I said, oh my God, it's so beautiful and it's so different than anything. And the energy changed, the energy shifted.
Achha.
And after that, it was a very different energy. So in the hardest of times, if we can remember this trick, whether it's with our own children, whether it's with our parents, whether it's with our partners, whether it's with our clients or people that we're dealing with in our workspaces, our friends, if we can for a second imagine or let our 7-year-old self talk to their 7-year-old self. And the only difference is, it's a literal exchange, of course, as well. But then I asked, मैं भी जो बात करने लगी थी, कल मैंने अपनी inner child से पूछा कि अच्छा आप हैं, like, what is my 7-year-old self? What does she what is in one line, because मुझे बड़े one line का बड़ा शौक है ना, in one line Madiha, 7-year-old Madiha, if you can explain to me in one line,
अच्छा.
what do you stand for, what do you believe in? And it doesn't matter how silly it sounds, just tell me. And today I wrote it down. It's such a simple line what she believes in. It's nothing like big. She says, and it ranks so true for me because it's something that I truly, truly believe in, and I'm being tested on now as well, which is that I believe that there is no bigger force in the world than love that can heal, that can transform, and that can, if there was any fixing to be done, fix people's broken hearts. There is no other. And if you can love with a heart that only wants to love, and a heart that only sees the 7-year-old self in the murderer, in the rapist, in the abuser, you will see that there is a child drenched in pain who has nowhere else to go but to inflict pain on another. And my 7-year-old self refuses to be a part of that cycle anymore. She refuses to be a part of it. And I'm a Muslim, but for the first time in my life, there's no but. Our heritage is that of Christianity. For the first time in my life, I understand what turning the other cheek means. It does not mean giving in to aggression. It means looking at another with love. There is no other meaning to it. We've got to break that cycle. And that's another, there was a big conflict that was happening in the office recently. And there was so much anger, there was so much hatred on every side. And for a brief moment, for like 20-25 minutes, I lost my shit. I said, it doesn't matter who said what, doesn't matter. They're all hurting. We're all in pain. It doesn't matter men, women. It doesn't matter men are like that and men treat women like that. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We're all hurting. We're all hurting. And can we just please take a second? Recess, guys. Go take a break. Recess time. Take a break and come back. And can we learn to play together?
Play together. Yeah.
That's it. That's it. And like, it's so that's what she said. She said, that's what I believe in. And it's not an easy thought because it's not practical and does not mean that you stay in abusive relationships.
Absolutely,
None of that, or you condone abusive behavior. But you can be so separate from somebody and in your heart, look at them in your heart, from the eyes of your heart. Look at them with love. At some point, send them love, send them healing, send them compassion while being separate from them. So nobody's saying stay in abusive spaces. Separate yourself. But once you separate yourself, you'll begin to understand everybody's hurting. And I don't know, being the inner child, there's something so contagious about the energy.
The energy is different altogether. It's absolutely.
It's like, I know. Yeah. And it doesn't feel like खत्म हो जाएगी. तुम्हें लगता है ऐसे?
नहीं.
कि आप थक जाओगे या कुछ हो जाएगा?
मुझे लगता है कि वो एनर्जी आप एडल्टहुड में चैनलाइज कर रहे हैं. तो you can.
तो फिर आप टेस्ला बना सकते हो.
वाकई में आप क्या कुछ नहीं कर सकते.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You're just tapping into frequencies which are already there. Frequencies that you already know of. Yeah. And you're just riding the wave like a surfer. So it can be an incredible journey. The other, and I just came across this post this morning and it resonated so well with my inner child. और किसी Buddhist माने जाने इंसान ने वो बोला है. And I was like, यार ये तो मेरा soul, ये my best friends होंगे हम लोग. For sure, right? For sure. So, you know what he said? He said, when we look at trees, this is his inner child speaking. See, this is inner child speak. And this is what the quote that he said. He said, when we look at trees, we allow them to be. We accept them as the way they are. We don't ask an apple tree to become an orange. We accept that tree. He said, when I meet people, I imagine them as trees. I imagine them as trees and then I accept them
Accept
as.
them as they are.
And I was like, dude, मैं तो पूरा बाग बनाऊं. This is so beautiful, no? It's incredible. What a great tool. So, like, if I were to headline caption this podcast, I'm going to do this. Like, forget all other tools you've learned as an inner child. So, what does it mean to be an inner child? Equals to imagine people as trees. It's like the perfect formula for life. नहीं?
Yeah, bilkul.
मतलब अगर वो
The peace of mind that you get out of that.
हाँ, you're already imagining people as trees. Isn't it so simple? Like, then you're not expecting, because you know the biggest, again, one of the biggest conflict, what's it called? What's the biggest friction that the inner child feels very strongly is when they're not accepted for who they are. Because they know who they are. They know. और आप उनको कहे जा रहे हो कि आप ये नहीं हो, आप ये नहीं, अब ऐसा बन जाओ, वैसा बन जाओ, वैसा. Anybody but yourself. और जो आपको ये कह रहा है उनका खुद इनर चाइल्ड खामोश बैठा हुआ है अंदर. तो आप वो एक फैज़ की क्या, हाय हाय, कौन सी बहुत ही खूबसूरत है, अब तुम ही कहो क्या करना है, इन नुस्खा है वफ़ा, एक आखिरी, उसकी जो आखिरी कॉम्पिलेशन में जो आखिरी वाली नज़म है वो है, अब तुम ही कहो क्या करना है, तो अब जिसको चाहो दोष धरो. That's one of the lines, right? उसमें अब who you going to blame? Like, अगर आपने विक्टिम प्ले करना है तो उसने मुझे ये किया, मेरे माँ बाप ने मेरे साथ ये किया, फिर उस बंदे ने ये किया, फिर उन्होंने फिर ये किया, फिर मेरे टीचर्स ने ये किया, फिर मेरे साथ ये, फिर मेरे साथ ये तो सारे लोगों के इनर चाइल्ड खामोश बैठे हुए. तो
And
अब,
you become one of them as well.
yes. So the biggest gift you can give by imagining people as trees is the gift of acceptance. So then you are actually allowing your inner child to speak to their inner child. I accept you as you are. आप मुझे अगर मतलब I used to have a very गंदी ज़बान. गंदी मतलब low vibration ज़बान. I should, I think, use correct words. गंदी in my energy perspective. Low vibration ज़बान में बहुत ज़्यादा swear words use करती थी. तो I'm surrounded by people, mashallah, in my personal life who use a lot of swear words. So the judginess or the judgment comes from, जो हमारे अंदर तो बहुत टूट के भरी हुई है कि अल्लाह वो कैसे इंसान होंगे जो गालियाँ देते हैं. And yet when I look at them there's sometimes when I look at them with judgy eyes, that's my grown up. कि अगर मैं यहाँ अब मैं यहाँ पे हूँ तो सबको भी यहीं पे होना चाहिए, हालांकि मैं अगर यहाँ पे हूँ तो forget that part of it. But the other part of it is when we accept that person as a daraht who is just a freaking aggressive daraht. Can't change it. But then the other beautiful parts of that daraht. So when you imagine that person as a daraht now, then it's not just the fact that it's a very solid, sakht daraht. Then you begin to look at the leaves, you begin to look at the way the wind blows through those specific leaves and the music that it plays when it blows through those specific leaves. Because हर दरख्त के में से हवा के गुजरने की आवाज़ भी मुख्तलिफ होती है ना? Yeah. So imagine people as trees. I feel like that's one. So if you were to, I don't know, say something about how we can connect more with our inner children, what would that be? So if you could say something, or which you could share, okay, how can we connect with our inner child more in our everyday life? What is that one thing you would say? How can we do it?
Well, if I talk specifically about myself in the current scenario, I have a son, and I just find it beautiful when he is interacting with his father. And that's when I kind of try to connect with my inner child as well, because
because you haven't been around a father figure. Yeah. So it's a sense of wonder that you feel.
Yeah, and I just relive that moment. I just feel that I'm sorry, I think I don't.
It's okay. Yeah, I think in that moment, because I've also faced such moments, not father related, but in such
Hmm.
moments where somebody else reminds you of what it must feel like. And I wanted to share कि in that moment, if you can, because you're experiencing it, it's beautiful. Your inner child is experiencing it, it's beautiful. And in that moment, if you can silently assure your inner child कि you are loved exactly as he's being loved.
Hmm.
You are adored exactly as he's being adored. You're seen exactly as he's being seen. And you are treasured exactly as he's being treasured
Right.
because you are. The eyes might not be that of your father, but the eyes are of the source which has created. So it is the father mother eyes anyway. So if you can take that moment, it becomes even more like it's like a tool that it
Hmm.
works for me, and I'd love for you to try it and let me know if it does work for you. But it's a tool that there are certain things that our inner child has never heard, has never been spoken to and spoken of. So if we can take these beautiful moments where we're already naturally connecting with our inner child and use that moment to speak the words that they've wanted to hear for a long time,
Hmm.
it makes them stronger. It makes your relationship with your inner child stronger. So kind words, words of love, words of goo goo gaga,
Yeah.
like of words which make no sense to anybody else. मैं तो बैठ के पपियां करती हूँ
To your inner
and
child.
to my inner child,
Yeah.
and it sounds a little cuckoo, but sometimes when I've been really into the moment मैं अपने हाथों को भी पपियां करना शुरू कर देती हूँ because I have my mother was never physically demonstrative mother.
Hmm.
There was a lot going on in her life. It's a different generation. They had very 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 different set of challenges.
बिल्कुल.
तो मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगता है physical demonstration of affection, which by the way I also was not till about a year and a half ago
अच्छा.
with my own children
अच्छा.
or with anybody else,
हाँ.
but especially with my own children. मैं नहीं थी पपियां जपियां वाली. Hugs wali mein thi because it was easier for me. I'd learned that in college to hug people, make them feel like they're important in your life. So it was a trick that I had learned in college. I didn't know how else to fit in and to make friends, so I became a hugger.
Hmm.
So it felt good also to have human contact, but otherwise I'm a loner. Like मुझे नहीं अच्छा लगता physical boundary cross करना in any way. So when I started reassuring my inner child, you're loved, you're adored, my God, I love you so much, and my God, you're the most beautiful child I've ever seen. Look at your beautiful. Then I become very specific. Look at your beautiful hands. Look at your beautiful eyes. Look at your beautiful tip of your nose. Look at your hair. Look at your stomach. So many of us are not comfortable with our bodies. Look at your beauty. So I specify small, like you would speak to a child, and then because I'm speaking to myself like that, I like to translate that to my daughter also. So then I find myself उसकी मैं पाँव को पपियाँ कर रही होती हूँ, उसकी मैं एक एक टो को पकड़ के, and for me for an OCD इसलिए मैं तो उसको वेट वाइप से उसके पाँव साफ करूँ, फिर साबुन से धुलाऊँ, फिर उस पर डिटॉल मारूँ पपियाँ करने से पहले, तो मैं तो उसको पकड़ लेती हूँ. And she likes to walk barefoot, by the way.
अच्छा.
I feel
Yeah,
like
yeah,
she's the
yeah,
external
understand.
version of my inner child. No, my inner child नहीं, my actual daughter
अच्छा. अच्छा.
likes to also walk barefoot.
अच्छा. अच्छा.
तो फिर मैं उसको पकड़ के उसकी मैं पाँव के ऊपर पपियाँ करना शुरू कर देती हूँ. So it's like the more I connect with my inner child, the easier it is for me to show love also. And it's like so many, and I know we were talking about this before the podcast, so when you go back and see what happens when your inner child has not gotten the love that he or she deserves, so what are the behaviors that come up in the rest of your life, right?
बिल्कुल.
So do you want to talk a little bit about those behaviors? ये क्या क्या तुमको याद है तुमने क्या पढ़ा था उसके अंदर?
अच्छा. अपने पर्सनल एक्सपीरियंस से अगर मैं आपको बताऊँ ना, तो वही जिस तरह मैं अभी पहले भी इस चीज़ का जिक्र कर रही थी कि मुझे आई कुड फील दैट मुझे एक सेंस ऑफ इनसिक्योरिटी आ गई थी. आई वाजंट कॉन्फिडेंट इनफ. People around me, my friends, my family, everybody used to say that I am a very creative person. Like generally, वो लोग उनका opinion होता था ये मेरे बारे में, लेकिन मुझे खुद नहीं लगता था ये. मुझे खुद फील नहीं होती थी. और I think that reflected throughout the journey till I would say कुछ टाइम पहले से जब when I actually realized that my inner child needs healing.
Positive
Yeah.
note. Okay, so I'm going to be real. Okay, guys. We had a moment here for a brief moment, and we're really trying very hard to wrap it up on a positive note because we're not even pretending that this is like a finished film right now. Okay, this is supposed to be real. This is supposed to be like ordinary courage. So we're going to be thinking of a positive note and perhaps asking for comments, people to please comment and say कि वो positive note क्या होगा. Okay, so then, here's the deal, Noor. So then I share one positive note and then you share one positive note. ठीक है?
ठीक है.
Okay. The positive note that I want to share. Okay, so the good news is, so there's no bad news after this, okay? So the good news is for me, the good news is no matter how hard you try, no matter how idiotic you are as an adult, and here goes my headphone. So no matter how silly you are in suppressing your inner child, the good news is the inner child will never ever go away because that's the core of you. So you can choose to put your the inner child calling you on snooze for 1,000,000 times if you want, but you will answer that call one day. And when you do, it's going to be amazing. So that's my positive note. What's yours?
I think self compassion is one thing that you really need to show yourself.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yes.
In fact, there's a whole trend going on. मेरे बाल ऊपर हो गए. वैसे ऊंची से बता दो. मेरे पिछले भी पूरे पॉडकास्ट में ना ऊपर सींग निकला हुआ था. It's okay. अब सही है. अब यही लाइफ है नूर. यही लाइफ है. My inner child is like, this is who I am. Forget it. Acha, so this beautiful trend on this note, this beautiful trend that's going on Instagram, where all these motivational speakers and the positive life talk people share every time I try to be harsh with myself, I also remember I'm being harsh to her, and then they cut to their childhood pictures. Isn't that so pretty?
Very.
Isn't that so? I really beautiful. It really hit me. I was like, yeah. I think visually that really stayed with me. So, and I loved how all of them imagine it's like, oh, I'm not मेरे पास मेरे 2,010 followers होने चाहिए. For example, I'm just saying this is how they would think, right? Why? So or I'm not doing well enough in my life, right? That's how they would think. But then it's like, remember, I'm also saying the same thing to all these. To the little girl. And then they cut to all the childhood pictures of that little girl. And आपका दिल आपका कलेजा ही बैठ जाता है देख के कि आप उस बच्ची को क्यों कह रहे हो. तमीज़ से नहीं बात हो सकती है आपकी बच्ची से. So that's exactly what self-compassion is. Every time we start to feel that we're not doing well, or we should be doing more, we should not be sleeping in today, we should be working harder and resting less, and should not be taking care of ourselves so much, and blah blah blah. Also remember you saying the same thing to the 7-year-old you. So a little bit more kindness, a little bit more compassion to who we are. And I think that's the easiest plug back into our inner child. Okay. So thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Maliha. Thank you.
I love you.
Love you too.
Okay. It's a wrap. I am me. It's so beautiful.